This week, the UK marked a major milestone with the government's decision to admit an AI minister to attend cabinet for the first time in a symbol of the technology's increased importance both strategically and economically. The UK has enjoyed an outside influence in the world of artificial intelligence, with Britain collecting the lion's share of European investment into AI businesses and being home to some of the world's top frontier labs, including in the form of Google's DeepMind hub in King's Cross. But as AI adoption ramps up across the board, there is an increasing awareness and fear of the risks and threats posed by the technology and the host of moral and political quandaries it poses to governments and policymakers. To discuss these, I'm joined by the editors of a new book, The Artificial Intelligence Revolution, Nicholas Fairfax and Max Rangeley. Thank you both very much for joining us in our newsroom today. Before we get onto the book, I wonder if I could first of all just invite you to offer your thoughts on the government's decision, the new government's decision to, for the first time, appoint an AI minister to attend cabinet. Do you think this is purely a symbolic thing, or is there something more sort of meaningful behind it?
No, I think it's certainly more than symbolic, and I think more and more countries are going to do this. Ideally, this would have happened some years ago, and we could have been working on this in the lead up to AI really getting to the position it is now. But it's incredibly important, both from the economic aspect, because AI will impact essentially every area of the economy in years to come, even more so than it is already. But also the military aspect, as we have a whole section on in this book, and also, as you noted, the safety aspect, because right now, AI is something that we use for perhaps researching, something along these lines. It may be choosing products or something. But within years to come, we will reach the point where AI will reach human-level intelligence in most, if not all, cognitive domains, and perhaps exceed human-level intelligence quite quickly after that. So yes, it is important that we have an AI minister. Let's just hope they have the right advisors as well, serious scientists and others that know what they're talking about, and not just politicians. And so on.
I wonder, Nick, if it's also a sign of an observation that I've had as a journalist, and I think that a lot of people have had as members of the public, in that there is, at the moment at least, a vast sort of chasm in the extent to which different people understand AI, and also the extent to which they have adopted it. I mean, I know people who understand it who don't really use it, and people who use it all the time that don't really understand it. And is there also that kind of a chasm within the cabinet?
I'm very glad to see this, because I think not only will AI, there's another book out which you may have heard of called The Coming Wave. And I think that phrase very, very well encapsulates what AI is going to do. It's going to invade every single aspect of our lives. Not just, you talked about financial and economic and military, much, much more, everything, in fact. So I think it's entirely right that there should be, that the government has recognized this by putting a cabinet, somebody entitled to attend cabinet, responsible for these things. And I think it's also a counterweight to the fact that, if you remember a couple of years ago, the Bletchley Park conference, which was so heralded when Rishi Sunak was Prime Minister, and there were great expectations of that going forward, that not only would you have the Bletchley Park one, where you had a declaration signed by lots of people, including the Chinese at the end, but then the subsequent conferences when the impetus would be carried forward. And unfortunately, as we discussed yesterday in Cambridge, that has not been the case. So the next one was in Seoul, and the next one after that was in Paris. And then after that, I'm afraid on the international plane, the initiative has rather run into the ground. So I think it's extremely good that this initiative, by having somebody with the overall AI responsibility attending cabinet, because that will bring a bit of balance back to this rather disappointing, as I say, what I call the Bletchley Park initiative has actually ended up rather running into the sand and not going anywhere for the time being, which is certainly from our point of view, worrying from the point of view of the world.
So I suppose, do you disagree with my sort of assessment I gave in the introduction there, that at least at the moment the UK does have a sort of outsized influence in the world of AI? It does punch above its weight at the moment, insofar as we do have the biggest share of private equity and venture capital investment into AI businesses. We've sort of won that race in Europe, at least. Yep. And we are a major player, if not although we're not the biggest.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very, and in fact, one of the chapters in our book we've got, I think is hopefully is quite original rather than just the usual topics being covered, is in fact a company called Seed Camp, who I think I'm right in saying invested in 400 AI startups. And so they've seen it from from a venture capital point of view about investing right at the start and taking things on. And so that's available, that chapter is available in the book for those who are interested. And I think it's very good. And of course, the one that everyone talks about, of course, is DeepMind. They were very much considered the good guys and also a torchbearer for the UK AI sector.
Turning to the book, I wonder if I could just ask you a sort of rudimentary question to begin with, which is, I mean, did your sort of general views or feelings towards artificial intelligence change after having finished the book compared to where you were at the start? I mean, are you more afraid? Are you more optimistic? How do you feel about it all?
I think it's deepened our knowledge of these issues, let's say. I still think AI is a very substantial risk. So it will continue to bring a lot of benefits in terms of healthcare, longevity, in business and many other areas. But we will reach a point within the next few years where it will become a significant danger to humanity. And that may well happen quite quickly. So that's actually been my view since I was a teenager, really, actually, for quite a few years. But having spent the last couple of years speaking with all of these experts in this book, I think it's really just certainly in my case, deepened my knowledge of how this might come about, the different risks that there are. It's really is the most complex area of policymaking in the world today, because it's even among the top experts, there's so many different predictions about how this may develop over the next few years.
I was interested in a section in the book by Connor Leahy, the director of Control AI, where he gave a prediction about where AI will take us in the future. He said, our broad prediction is that AI will be made both far more intelligent and powerful than humans, and also autonomous to the point that they will replace every single part of civilization. Which I suppose brings me on to a sort of ongoing debate within a lot of sort of news reports about AI, which is the sort of predictions about the extent to which AI could destroy civilization or lead to mass unemployment, and the extent to which those predictions are legitimate, or whether there is a bit of doom-mongering on the part of frontier AI companies desperate for funding who need to sort of assert how powerful they are. Of course, those things aren't necessarily incompatible, but I mean, where do you sit on that sort of spectrum of opinion?
I mean, this fear over the dangers of AI has long preceded the current AI companies, both among AI experts, whether it's Stuart Russell or some of the others that have written chapters for our books, the top professors in the world on AI. But also, this has also been a theme in science fiction as well. And actually, that type of fiction can have quite strong predictive capabilities for the future, if you look back through science fiction. And so, no, this is not just frontier AI companies stoking this fear so that perhaps they can have regulatory moats built around them to keep out their competitors. I'm sure there are elements of that, but this is a very real danger. It's also worth noting in, one of the constant themes in science fiction has been AI becoming conscious. Now, that is actually the chapter that I did for this book, is the nature of consciousness in AI. But AI is also just as dangerous without consciousness. It's worth noting that. And it may well be humans with AI that present the greatest danger. So, for instance, the capability to design biological weapons, that may well be the most dangerous aspect of AI in years to come, is that there have been significant, let's say, barriers to entry for countries to develop very dangerous weapons, or terrorist groups, or whatever it happens to be. It's expensive, you need experts, it's time consuming, and so on. And if there was just a small number of states that had access to these weapons, it was relatively stable, although still dangerous. If with AI, we enter a situation where a lot more smaller countries can develop very deadly weapons, perhaps biological weapons that are far more deadly than anything we've known so far, and perhaps even non-state actors as well. That, I think, is a very dangerous world that we're moving into. And so I think most of our focus, in my view, should be on that side of things rather than, let's say, super intelligent AI turning on humans. And certainly that threat will happen before the super intelligent threat happens.
So I guess speaking of the use of AI in warfare and defense, Nick, you were a member of the Lord's Select Committee on AI and Weapons.
I was indeed, yeah.
One of the things that really struck me in your chapter of the book is where you talk about both how the concept of meaningful human control over weapons is becoming quite a sort of grey area, because to what extent is it a sort of almost a superficial level of control that a lot of militaries now have over this technology, or almost performative, and also the real threat of what you call inadvertent escalation. That is when semi-autonomous AI inadvertently detects threats that sort of phantom threats don't really exist. This happens on both sides in a conflict, and suddenly it ramps up to a level much greater than it ought to have been as a result.
Yeah, well, you've touched on two important points. The meaning from human control remains an important part of international law, so that there should always be, in the end, a human on the loop or in the loop, or at least somewhere in the chain controlling things. And of course, I don't know whether that Rubicon has been crossed already. If you look at, you only have to look at Ukraine to wonder whether any of those drones that have become so significant are already operating, who knows, beyond human control. And indeed, it's considered, I think, that Rubicon has been crossed already. I think in Libya, I think there was an example a few years ago when it was thought to have been crossed. So that is, we did major on that because in the report, because meaningful human control remains, that's an important touchstone. But in fact, there is international law, behind the reality of the development of AI and weapon systems. I think the danger is it would be. One thing we did do is we distinguished between offensive and defensive weapons. So you could have, you probably remember from the Falklands War, there was a system on ships called Phalanx, which automatically engages with incoming missiles and so on, and it doesn't ask permission. When it on the radar or on its system spots an incoming exocet or whatever it is, it just fires in defense. And so we did make a distinction in the end between, because one tends to think of AI on the battlefield in terms of offensive weapons, whereas in fact there may be a difference between when they're used offensively and defensively. If I may, Simon, could I go back to something you touched on a few minutes ago, because it's a subject that interests me very much, about employment and net job loss and so on and so forth. So one of our Hilary Vipond in the book, one of our contributors made the point that, okay, it's often said that the people who are the doomsters about unemployment and so on, I think there's going to be mass unemployment. Like, for example, Elon Musk, who believes in future there'll be no work and only people who want to work will work. Then, in fact, she posits a situation where so it is often said that there will be new jobs created that don't exist at the moment. But she then asked the question, well, what if AI outcompetes humans for those new jobs? So he said, you can see it's quite a neat point. And the other point I want to make, which I was discussing with Max before we came in here this morning, was that the situation where about companies, in particular large companies, so they have to compete with each other, perhaps by automating many of their processes and getting rid of a lot of their headcount. And I saw, I think you probably saw a month or two ago, Oracle got rid of 10,000 jobs or something. And so there you have, mass unemployment being started to be created. And the question is whether that will remain the case, or because if companies don't compete in the same way against their competitors, then they're not going to be competitive, and so they're probably obliged to follow their competitors in letting people go. But if they do so, they'll also potentially be destroying economic demand, because if you take that to the end, you can see where we're going. Then you actually end up with no economic demand at all.
Indeed.
Now, that may be considered absurd and ridiculous and so on, reductio ad absurdum. But in fact, I think it is potentially, where the world is going. So it is, because as Musk says, AI, and particularly when combined with robots, you have advanced robots, and we've got a chapter in the book on robotics combined with AI. You can imagine that is where really then it touches the physical world. You have AI and advanced AI-enabled robots working in the physical world. You can see that, in fact, they never sleep, they never eat, they can work 24 hours a day, they never have headaches and need to take their day off.
So I suppose, final question, just to tie things up, when we think about both the economic threats that lie in the future and the sort of military warfare ones, obviously when you putting together this book, you've spoken to a lot of policymakers, you've spoken to academics and people within government. Do you feel confident that the government, the civil service, has a grip on this, has the requisite degree of understanding to get ahead of some of these challenges?
Well, there is the AI Safety Institute here, which is and the CTO of there is somebody called Jade Lung, who's very highly regarded. So I think although when you started off, you mentioned about how DCIT is being reorganized and so on, and perhaps the cards are going to fall slightly differently there, but AI-SI is still there, and that is very important, its role, the Safety Institute, as its name implies, and perhaps going a little further than just, safety as such. So that is extremely important. But just cards on the table, I think, as Max touched on right at the beginning, I'm afraid I am at the doomster end of the of the spectrum. Maybe not quite as far as Connolly. He was very well known for being an extreme doomster. And one of the reasons that I'm most concerned is that the CEOs of the mega AI companies themselves express concern. And they sort of say, well, we're obliged to continue competing against our competitors, because if they get to artificial general intelligence or super intelligence first, then they've won the race. Nevertheless, we recognize that this is extremely dangerous. So, and you're not just getting them, are you, Max? You're getting. We touched on, I think, some headline names, at least two of which we have in our book: Stuart Russell and Yoshua Bengio, probably two of the three top AI people in the world, not business people, but academics more, and they express extreme concern about where this is going, because if you go back a few years, probably before GPT and so on, you thought that this was something that we had to think about in 50 years' time. But now people are talking about a time frame of maybe 5 years or something.
Yeah.
So it's really rather more immediate, and therefore, coming back to your first question, I think it's extremely good that there is someone in the cabinet who is got cabinet level responsibility to think about all this stuff.
Right. Well, we'll leave it there. Thanks both very much for coming in. The book, Artificial Intelligence Revolution, available in all good bookshops. And for all the latest news on artificial intelligence, head over to cityam.com.